On December 30th, 1985, while investigating a car crash on an embankment near Mountain View Cemetery in Seattle, Auburn City Police discovered a set of remains, and it was that of a human body. The identity of those remains was unknown, and they were labeled as Bone 17. Similarly, a few months prior, on April 23, 1985, skeletal remains of another unidentified woman were discovered near a golf course in Tualatin, Oregon, and were named Bones 20. The horrific discovery of skeletal remains raised questions. Who were the victims? What happened to them? And were they connected? Soon after the discovery of the skeletal remains in King County, authorities started an immediate investigation. As the first step of the investigation, they tried to identify the remains, but they failed. However, from the condition and patterns of the remains, investigators connected Bone 17 and Bones 20 to other murders that occurred between 1982 and 1984 in King County, Seattle. Police suspected that those two might be additional victims of the notorious serial killer known as the Green River Killer, whom they had been frantically searching for. To know more about the Green River Killer, we need to go back a bit to 1982. In the early 1980s, many of the victims of the Green River Killer were discovered in or near the Green River, leading to the unidentified notorious killer being called the Green River Killer. In July of 1982, the body of the Green River Killer's first victim was found in King County, with a unique kind of spray paint on the clothing wrapped around her neck. Initially, she remained unidentified, but was later discovered to be Wendy Lee Cofield. In the subsequent days, investigators got no clue about the killer, but something unexpected happened in the following month. In the month of August 1982, dead bodies of 4 young women were also found along the Green River. Those killings in King County prompted the King County Sheriff's Office to form the Green River Task Force to investigate these murders. But authorities were unaware that this was only the beginning, and a series of killings was about to unfold. In 1983, investigators suspected a man in the Green River killings when 18-year-old Marie Malvar disappeared. Marie and her boyfriend were at a restaurant on State Route 99, also known as the Pacific Highway in Seattle. Then her boyfriend stepped outside for a call, and when he returned, she was gone. He then saw a truck passing by with her sitting beside the driver and talking. Then her boyfriend started searching for her along the highway and nearby areas in Seattle. Being informed, police also started checking for regular truck drivers on the Pacific Highway. But sadly, there was no sign of her. On a later day, Marie's boyfriend finally found the truck in front of the house of a local truck painter, Gary Ridgway, which he believed was the same one she had boarded the day she went missing. Being informed by him, local police reached there, but Marie was not there. After a few days, her body was found in the Green River. After the incident, authorities interrogated Gary Ridgway in connection with the case. From the interrogation, police received several other crucial tips connected to him. However, Ridgway denied the accusations and passed a polygraph test in 1984.
He would tell me that everything's okay. He didn't do it. He didn't hurt those women. He didn't kill them. He didn't.
In the meantime, the series of missing women and killings continued. By the end of 1982, over 15 women had either gone missing or been found dead.
The list kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
The pressure was mounting on the authorities as they had not yet nabbed the killer, which meant that more lives were in danger.
We're calling attention to the fact that these women are being killed, and anything is better than nothing.
By June of 1983, over 26 girls had gone missing, and the number of killings continued to grow by this time. By the end of 1984, more than 40 victims were killed. Then there was a sudden change. After 1985, the rate of killings declined significantly, with the final one happening in 1998. Authorities found the bodies of many victims unclothed along the Green River bank, sometimes grouped together and posed. Some other victims were also discovered in remote wooded areas in King County. In some victims, there was clear evidence of assault, and bodily fluids were found on them. Authorities collected evidence including DNA samples from all the spots and stored them for further investigation. However, the authorities continued investigating more about Ridgway as the prime suspect in the case with the hope of getting any leads. They got to know that in 1969, at the age of 20, Ridgway spent 2 years serving in the U.S. Navy. Following his service, he moved to the Seattle area and took up a job as a truck painter. The paint discovered on the first victim, Wendy Cofield, was not analyzed at the time. If it had been tested back then, connecting the murder to Ridgway would have been easier. However, further investigation revealed Ridgway's criminal records, including an arrest on a prostitution charge in 1982. He was also arrested in 1980 for allegedly choking a hooker. However, each time he was set free due to a lack of evidence. Considering all the circumstances of the case, authorities finally obtained a search warrant for Ridgway's residence and workplace in 1987. But sadly, they found nothing crucial. Despite collecting various items like carpet fibers and ropes, none could be linked to the victims after the extensive search. Then, a DNA sample was also collected from Ridgway's hair and saliva and sent for testing. However, the technology available at the time could not match Ridgway's DNA with the bodily fluids recovered from the victims' bodies. He was not arrested and was moving freely as a deadly predator. Despite the involvement of a large task force, the case had remained unsolved and cold for years. As time passed, people nearly forgot about the Green River Killer. Finally, in 2001, with the introduction of more advanced tests, a match was identified, leading to Ridgway's arrest later that year. On November 30th, 2001, he was arrested after being linked to the murders of 4 women in 1982. Who were identified as Deborah Bonner, Marcia Chapman, Cynthia Hines, and Opal Mills. Despite initially claiming innocence, Ridgway quickly confessed to the crimes, expressing his desire to target women with his hatred. He admitted to specifically targeting hookers and underage runaways because he believed they would not be reported missing, and he despised them.
A lot of the young girls had grown up in abusive homes, and that was why they were running away. And I could relate to that. I'm a survivor of abuse.
Ridgway also claimed that he would sometimes show the victims a picture of his son to gain their trust. Once the victims trusted him, he would take them to his home or isolated places to be physically intimate with them. Then, after his physical satisfaction, he used to strangle his victims, typically by hand, but occasionally with ligatures.
All the pressure just built and built and built and built. My releasing point was killing women.
He murdered most victims either at his residence, in his truck, or at remote locations. Afterward, he disposed of their bodies in different places of forested and overgrown areas of King County, Seattle. To confuse police, he went as far as transporting the remains of some victims across state lines into Oregon. He also claimed a disturbing fact that after discarding their bodies, he would occasionally revisit and engage in necrophilia with them.
Did you revisit any of these?
I revisited at least one of them.
And when we say revisit, what did you come back to do?
Have sex with her.
He later accepted that he found necrophilia no more satisfying, but it decreased his urge to seek out a living victim. To know more about Ridgway's psychology behind all the murders, investigators interviewed him multiple times. During those interactions, unexpectedly, he behaved like a gentleman.
You sleep okay?
No.
Well, that didn't look like the Hilton in there. I got a glimpse of it.
Well, it had a posturepedic mattress in there, so it was serious, so that was good. Yeah, a little bit hot in there, but...
From these exchanges, authorities got to know more disturbing facts about his young days. Ridgway claimed that his mother, Mary Ridgway, had engaged in inappropriate behavior, such as washing his private parts due to his bedwetting habits, which led him to fantasize about killing her.
Washing her son's genitals, and you realize that most teenage boys are having an awful time with dealing with their own emerging sexuality.
Destabilizing for an adolescent boy to see his mother in a sexual manner.
As he grew older, his behavior took a destructive turn. In the mid-1960s, he mercilessly stabbed a boy, nearly killing him. Surprisingly, despite being a deadly psycho killer, Ridgway lived a very normal life before being arrested. He married thrice and had a son with his second wife, Marcia Winslow. Around 1985, Ridgway started a relationship with Judith Mawson, who eventually became his third wife and spent 13 happy years of marriage together. Later, in interviews, she disclosed numerous details about him.
When I first met him, I thought he was quite the gentleman and so polite and nice. He loved the country music and the dancing.
She claimed that when she started living in his house, there was no carpet. Detectives later informed her that he probably had used the carpet to wrap a body. According to her, some days, Ridgway used to go to work very early in the morning to earn overtime pay. Investigators theorized that he might have committed some murders during the early morning shifts. Despite living with him, she never suspected him until she was informed by the investigating authorities.
I think I went into denial. I wasn't believing it.
During the relationship with Judith Mawson, the rate of killings decreased as Ridgway was truly in love with her. In an interview, Mawson said, "I feel I have saved lives by being his wife and making him happy." According to his second wife, Marcia Winslow, he had been devoutly religious, regularly reading the Bible and following the teachings of their pastor. In addition to his 3 marriages, he had dated many other women. According to them, he had an insatiable appetite for physical pleasure. Ridgway himself confessed to having a fascination with hookers, with whom he had a complex love-hate dynamic. However, according to his friends, he was a friendly but peculiar person. In the 2003 trial, Ridgway admitted to the killings of 48 women in Seattle and Tacoma, though he confessed to 71 in total, with suspicions of up to 90. He had mercilessly killed so many women that he lost the count. During the legal proceedings to avoid the death penalty, he agreed to assist investigators in locating the remains of his undiscovered victims. Accordingly, he took the investigators to different places where he had dumped his victims many years ago. After searching all the locations identified by Ridgway, authorities ultimately confirmed the total number of victims as 48 women. Most of them had remained unidentified initially, but were later recognized. Later, during interrogation, he confessed to killing Marie Malver decades ago in 1983. Wendy Lee Cofield was considered to be his very first victim. After Wendy and the previously mentioned 4 women, Giselle Lovorn, Terry McGillen, Deborah Estes, Linda Rule, Denise Bush, Shonda Summers, Shirley Sherrill, and many others were identified as Ridgway's victims. Ridgway also led authorities to a site where the remains later labeled as Bones 17 and Bones 20 were discovered. Following his confession, it was verified that those two unidentified women were also his victims. Finally, he was found guilty of killing 48 women.
Mr. Ridgway, how do you plead to the charge of aggravated murder in the first degree as charged in count 1?
Guilty.
On December 18, 2003, King County Superior Court Judge Richard A. Jones sentenced Ridgway to 48 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He also received an additional 10-year sentence for evidence tampering for each of the 48 victims, adding 480 extra years to his 48 life sentences. In January of 2004, Ridgway was put in solitary confinement at the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla. Just when everyone thought the case had ended, something unexpected happened. Surprisingly, on December 21, 2010, a group of hikers discovered a skull near West Valley Highway in Auburn, Washington, close to where the remains of a Green River victim had been found in 2003. The skull was identified as Rebecca Marrero's. On February 18, 2011, Ridgway pleaded guilty to the murder of Rebecca Marrero and confessed to killing her. But later he was found not guilty due to insufficient evidence, and his punishment had remained the same as before. Unfortunately, for so many years, the identities of the remains marked Bones 20 and Bones 17 had remained a mystery. The question persisted: who were the victims whose remains were labeled Bones 20 and Bones 17? Even though the Green River killer was punished, investigators continued their search for new developments and were continuously trying to identify Bones 20 and Bones 17. After the arrest in 2003, Ridgway directed investigators to a location near Kent, Des Moines Road in South King County, Washington, where he claimed he had dumped the victim's remains. Authorities searched the area and found only partial skeletal remains. Skull and major bones were missing. Then the evidence was sent to the University of North Texas, where a DNA profile was generated for the unidentified victim. The DNA test confirmed that the partial remains found in 2003 belonged to the same victim known as Bones 20, who was first discovered in April of 1985. Then the DNA profile was added to CODIS, a national database housing DNA profiles of missing individuals and unidentified remains. Sadly, there was no match, and the victim's identity remained unknown. At last, authorities entered the details of the case into the NamUs as UP 9930. Then, in 2022, King County Sheriff's Office members met with Othram representatives to talk about the Bones 20 case and submitted the remains to the Othram lab in Woodlands, Texas. Then Othram scientists effectively created a DNA extract from the skeletal remains. Subsequently, they used forensic-grade genome sequencing to generate a thorough DNA profile suitable for forensic genetic genealogy. Finally, in August of 2023, the in-house forensic genetic genealogy team identified Bones 20 as Tammy Lilas, who went missing from Seattle, Washington almost 4 decades ago. Then authorities contacted a relative of Tammy and acquired a reference DNA sample for comparative analysis. After further advanced testing, the match was confirmed. Tammy's family later confirmed that in May of 1983, Tammy ran away from home in Snohomish County, Oregon. What happened to her afterwards had remained unknown. Nothing much about her personal life was known. However, Tammy was not reported missing initially because she had a history of running away from home. After Bones 20, authorities aimed to identify Bones 17. In the month of December 1985, Bone 17 was discovered near another set of remains labeled as Bone 16 in the city of Auburn. Investigators had already confirmed that those remains belonged to unidentified victims of the Green River Killer. Finally, in 2012, through DNA testing, investigators identified Bone 16 as Sandra Denise Major, a 20-year-old girl. Sadly, the test results for Bone 17 consistently found no matches. In 2022, King County authorities partnered with Virginia-based Parabon Nanolabs, a DNA testing company employing advanced technology capable of identifying relatives even from distant connections. Parabon Nanolabs used the DNA from Bone 17 to sequence the individual's complete genome and subsequently uploaded the data to GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA in order to search for matches within public DNA databases. Finally, a match was found, and on December 19, 2023, King County identified Bone 17 as Lori Ann Respotnik, a teenager who went missing from Lewis County, Washington. Authorities contacted her family. Then a saliva sample was taken from Respotnik's mother, Donna Hurley, and sent to a lab at the University of North Texas to perform DNA comparison testing, and the match was confirmed. Born on November 13, 1967, Respotnik was raised by her parents, William and Donna Hurley, in Juneau, Alaska. But after her father's death, Donna raised her alone as a single mother, from when Respotnik was only 5 years old. Later, Respotnik's mother, Donna, revealed what had happened decades ago. She described Respotnik as a firecracker and reminisced about her bright and talented nature, noting her interests in sports, horses, cooking, and dogs. Donna claimed she could get A's without opening her books. According to Donna, Respotnik was a rebellious teenager who did not care about anything. She had run away from home multiple times, but eventually returned. One day, she had an argument with her mother over buying a horse. Donna declined her request as she didn't have any money at the time. Again in 1982, Respotnik ran away from her Lewis County home and never returned. Donna kept searching for her and also hired a private investigator, but she failed to find Respotnik, who mysteriously disappeared. However, after some time, she called home once to let her mother know that she was fine and living in Seattle, but that was the last time she contacted her mother. Finally, after 4 decades, the families of Tammy Lilas and Lori Ann Respotnik got closure. As a mother, Donna Hurley was heartbroken to learn of her daughter's tragic fate, having once hoped she was happily living with her own family somewhere. It makes me sad that her life ended that way, makes me angry at the person who did it, makes me angry at myself that I couldn't stop it, Donna said. But she had to accept the truth with a heavy heart at the end. On the other hand, after Tammy Lilas' identification, her family chose not to speak to the media. Ultimately, justice was served for all the victims, including Tammy and Respotnik, evoking deep emotions among their families as they reflected on their loved ones' tragic destinies. Now the question is the Green River Killer still alive in 2024? And the answer is yes. Gary Ridgway is still alive and serving a life sentence at the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla. After everything, the question remains, are there only 49 victims? Or will future investigations uncover new ones in the Green River killings?